Hey guys, we're back with another week of following the Israelites' journey out of Egypt. So just to recap, they had just left the Red Sea. They had just escaped Egypt. They had gotten through the Red Sea. It crashed on all the Egyptians, and they are now safe. So Moses leads them into the wilderness, where we will see them exploring for a little bit, and they start to complain to Moses and Aaron about how there's not enough food, how they don't have enough water, how they wish they could be slaves in Egypt again because at least they had food there, because they're so dramatic and some crybabies. They say that you have saved us from slavery only for us to starve. So God heard their complaints, and he sent manna in the morning for the Israelites to gather for just one day. And so this is important to remember here, because God is only sending them manna for one day, so that they have to rely on him every single day, so that they can't get complacent because each day God's going to provide the necessary food and water for them in an effort to try and build their faith, because they're very complacent people. And manna means what it is. They're a very sophisticated people. And so God only is giving them enough food for one day, and they can only gather enough for that one day. Anything that they try and gather for the next day to save up would go rotten. And the only day they would be able to gather multiple days worth of food was on the Sabbath, the day before the Sabbath, so that on the Sabbath they could rest. But they tried keeping some stuff for other days, and it would get filled with worms, and it was really stinky and gross and infected, and not the kind of bread that you would want to eat. Yuck. And they were really showing a lack of faith, that even though God had provided them with more than enough stuff to get out of Egypt, he had the Egyptians show favor on them, and they gave them a bunch of stuff before they left. He sent a bunch of plagues that did not affect the Israelites at all. They were seeing immense favor from God. They still lacked faith. And so God was also sending them quail, so they were not just eating manna, so it wasn't just bread. They were eating a bread, and they were getting some meat, and they were honestly living a pretty good life, considering they didn't have to really do anything. They were just getting provided for by God because God favored them. God wanted the Israelites to know that he had been hearing their complaining and that he was providing for them, even though their faith did not earn at all. They didn't deserve any of the grace that they were getting from God, but God was going to love them anyways. And so then at one point, God commands Moses to set aside some manna so that the generations to come would remember how God provided for them during this time. And so the things to focus on here are that God wants us to present him with our desires and our requests, but he wants us to do it with a thankful heart. He doesn't want us to be like the Israelites, who are grumbling and complaining and saying, well, I wish that I'd been back in slavery again, because at least then I had food and I had water and I had the creature comforts, and I had this and that. They just wanted to complain for the sake of complaining. But God cares about the things that we want, but he just doesn't want us to do it in a complacent way. Like, he wants to know the things that our hearts desire, but not in a way that makes us seem like we are entitled to getting things from God, especially because of the history of how much God's already done for us. It shows that we remember how he's already provided for us, and that he's been good in our lives. It's important to remember that in the past, God has provided for you, and in the present, God will provide for you. And that's the important way to be asking God for favor, is by saying that it's just God's character to be good. He's pleased with his people. He loves us, and he wants to, he wanted to provide for the Israelites. He didn't need them to be complaining in order to do it. They could have just asked, and God would have shown them favor. But it's also nice to know that even when we do complain and we don't deserve any grace from God, that he loves us so much that he shows grace and gives favor anyways. He still provided for the Israelites, even though they were complaining about how they were just recently set free. Like, their lives were on the up and up. It's crazy. He easily could have punished them. Like, picture if your siblings were all complaining, you get some ice cream and you share that ice cream with your siblings, and then they complain about not getting enough. They're saying like, oh, you should have given me more. I wish I had chocolate chips too. Like, you could easily say, okay, I'll take the ice cream back. But imagine that same scenario where your siblings are complaining, and then you end up giving them more ice cream, and you give them chocolate also, and you give them a cookie also. Like, that's essentially what God did for the Israelites, which is kind of crazy to think about. So Again, we miss you guys. We really hope that Corona gets solved soon, because it's a lot more fun to be with you and to hang out. And I hope you guys are having a good week.